It's no secret that Phantom Forces has a ton of guns, although a lot of them are really forgettable or just downright random. Like seriously, what even is the 5.0? But with the scope update proving that changing heavily requested things results in a positive outcome for the game, this is the perfect chance for stylists to clear some of their mistakes and add some new varieties to their bloated gun categories. Now, before we get into this, keep in mind that this list is mostly based around popular community-wide opinions as well as some of my own. And also, hey, if this video reaches the right people, we might see some of these weapons added to Phantom Forces in the near future, so help boost this video by leaving a like. But without further ado, let's begin. Starting off strong, I don't think there's an assault rifle that's been suggested more than the ACR. A lot of people, including myself, have fond memories of this thing from Modern Warfare 3 and have been yearning to see a modern depiction of it in Phantom Forces. Next up, Phantom Forces has a lot of traditional service rifles within its arsenal, so I don't think I need to argue in favor of the XM8. Especially since in terms of weapon manufacturers, HK Weapons reigns supreme over Phantom Forces with a strong history of having consistently strong, fun, and arguably overpowered weapons within the game. Lastly, it's no secret that a lot of people like using AKs in Phantom Forces, but their accessibility and beginner friendliness is rather scarce. So in terms of lower power AK variants, the Type 88 has always been kinda underpowered and the AK-12 just doesn't cut it. Not only is the Galil iconic, but it could also serve pretty well as an aggressive lower power AK variant for the low ranks to have fun with. If there's one category that could seriously benefit from an update, it would definitely be the battle rifles. I mean, come on, the highest ranked weapon is the FAL at 107, and ever since the category was added to Phantom Forces, it hasn't even hit double-digit weapon count. So why not fix that by adding an AR-15 variant for players to have fun with? Personally, I don't think it would be too out of place either, as most weapon categories follow a trend of having one or more AR-15 variants for newer and lesser skilled players to enjoy, like the Colt LMG or Colt SMG. Speaking of the Colt SMG, most people who used this back in the day probably remember its various conversions, one of which being a 50 GI conversions, which while hard to control was ridiculously fun. So why not bring that fun back in the form of the AR-10? The AR-10 would serve as an accessible mix between the old wackiness of the 50 GI conversion and the accurate nature of AR-15 weapons to make this battle rifle not just fun to use but also a reliable powerhouse for newer players with limited options. Now, as of this video, stylis has been working on the H-Car in the test place, and while this is definitely a step in the right direction, I think the Mark 14 EBR is another weapon that would do the battle rifle category well. But I do understand that in the current state of the battle rifle category and where it's headed, the EBR's addition is arguable, as while it may be iconic and highly suggested, it would now step over two of the existing battle rifle's toes, that being the obvious M14 and now the new H-Car. So while it would arguably bloat the category a little bit, I don't think that would be too bad, as the battle rifles are already an acquired taste. May as well enlarge the buffet a bit. In stark contrast to the battle rifles, carbines are plentiful in Phantom Forces. However, I don't think I have to be the one to tell you that most of them are either duplicates or objectively worse versions of already existing guns. So to spice up the carbines a bit, I think the CMG Mark 47 is the perfect choice, as it's basically an AK AR-15 hybrid weapon. But isn't that just the AK-12 UNC, I hear you say? No. See, I imagine if stylis were to add this one, it would start out locked to semi-auto and therefore have a full auto conversion to boot. It would then serve more as a side grade, offering much better accuracy and similar damage to the AK-12 UNC in exchange for a much lower fire rate. In similar tracks to the Mark 47, I think another unique addition gameplay-wise would be the Mark 18 carbine. For this, I imagine it basically being a full auto version of the M4 with basically the same damage. But wouldn't that invalidate the M4 entirely? Is this literally not just a direct upgrade? Yes. Look, if stylis is willing to just take every Colt SMG conversion and make them their own gun, I don't see why making a gun as a stand-in for the M4 full auto conversion would be such a problem. I mean, burst weapons are already objectively underpowered in Phantom Forces, and out of all the burst weapons, the M4 barely sees any use whatsoever. You call it replacing, I call it a breath of fresh air. Now, in terms of variety gameplay, I think the shotguns are actually pretty well balanced, so the next few weapons coming up are primarily based more on icon status and fun rather than shaking up the category. So with that in mind, I have but one question. Out of all the shotguns in existence, how the hell did we get weapons like the E-Gun or DBB-12, but the Mossberg 500, commonly seen as the shotgun, ended up being benched? I know I don't have to make a case for the Mossberg edition in Phantom Forces. Come on, stylis. There's only so many obscure or weird shotguns you can bullshit into the game before you eventually have to give the Mossberg a chance. Another one that shares icon status but is simultaneously also really fun to use is the Benelli M4. Now granted, we already have quite a few semi-auto shotguns, but none of them are really that accessible for the newest of newer players, which is where the Benelli M4 should truly shine as an affordable option unlocked a few ranks after the Remington 870. And also, if there's anything that's going to boost the game's longevity, it's the fun factor, so really it's a win-win to add this. Lastly, shotguns have a few ways of firing their shots, whether that be pump action or holding down mouse 1. But there's actually something the entire shotgun category, as well as the entire game for that matter, has a severe lack of: lever action guns. See, outside of the Henry, a really niche battle rifle with an even nicher shotgun conversion, Phantom Forces completely lacks any lever action shotguns, which is really a shame because lever actions are f***ing awesome to use. But if there's any gun that would do this slot justice, it would definitely be the Model 1887, an iconic lever action shotgun once again starring in Modern Warfare 3. Seriously, if Phantom Forces ever gets a lever shotgun, it would be a crime if it wasn't this one. Now, despite the category being absolutely massive, I would say the PDWs are actually pretty well rounded in terms of icons and variety gameplay, as I actually struggle to find anything to add. But if there's one thing that would be cool to have, then it'd definitely be the MP9, an even faster variant of the MP7 that often sounds way better than the damage it deals. Now, in terms of actually adding it, the PDW category already has a lot of conversion stand-ins, so the optimal option would be to make it an MP7 conversion rather than its own gun. But design-wise, the MP7 and MP9 do have notable aesthetic differences, and also since the Colt Mars and 5.0 exist, it wouldn't make sense if the MP9 didn't get to be its own gun as well. The DMRs have always been kind of an awkward category where the obscurity of Phantom Forces' arsenal is cranked up to the max. And outside maybe 2 DMRs, the category doesn't really have much icon status and is almost forgettable. But there's one thing that can fix all of these problems, and it sounds like this. Yeah. If that sound alone doesn't make you want to have the M1 Garand in Phantom Forces, I don't know what will. Now, as described best by Arch Productions, DMRs are meant to be a sniper variant that are able to put multiple shots down range in relative quick succession. But tell me, do you really get this feel when using DMRs at long range? No, of course you don't. I mean really, outside of SKS spam, DMRs and Phantom Forces have always been kind of bad at supplementing their long range responsibilities, so instead of changing every DMR individually, why not just add a truly long range focused one? I am of course talking about the M110 SAS, or as some people might know it, the RSAS. I mean come on, when you think about DMRs, you don't think of a gun like this, you think of a gun like this. The M110 SAS could turn the whole category around, since right now, DMRs are seriously outclassed by pretty much everything, even for long range, to the point where the low recoil and slow muzzle velocity PDWs are still more consistent for taking down long range targets than any of the DMRs are. The M110 SAS can fix all of this, and while it may then outclass the rest of the whole category, at least there would finally be one DMR that could actually put up a serious fight at range. Now, for the LMGs, I don't think there's a single person who would disagree when I say the M249 should be added to Phantom Forces. I mean, come on. Just like the Mossberg is the shotgun, the M249 is the LMG, and it's almost criminal how an automatic Zip 22 with a frying pan magazine was added, but apparently the M249 is completely out of the question. I mean, come on. Stylis adding the Stoner is almost an insult to the M249, as it looks exactly like it, but stat-wise is the exact opposite of it. Stylis, we've waited long enough and dealt with enough of your trolling. The M249 is long overdue and desperately needed after you ruined the only other ridiculously fast-firing LMG. But fine, if the M249 is really that much out of the question, then what about the PKM, another iconic LMG that many wouldn't object to being added? I mean, come on, it's another Russian wonder. Need I say any more? The PKM is one of a kind, and like how the AKU can turn into the PPK, the PKM could turn into the PKP, which could have the same design philosophy as the PPK, minus the burst part of course, because that wouldn't really make any sense. The snipers are pretty interesting, because in terms of icon status, the category is completely full of it, with the most obscure gun being the NTW. But in terms of actual usage, the variety is barely there, with pretty much a 50-50 split between completely clueless intervention users and the quick-scoping hypersweats featuring the Stair Scout. However, despite the category being full of icons, it's strange how Stylis actually decided to remove one of the bigger ones after Phantom Forces went out of beta. I'm of course referring to the MSR. Now, I have no idea why Stylis decided to abandon it after launch, but one thing's for sure. If the M107 can return to the game after being scrapped many years prior, why should the MSR be any different? You know, I don't think I'm alone when I say that the Model 700 has always been kind of underwhelming. When you first unlock it, it looks and sounds like a true hunter's rifle, but in practice, it's really anything but. So instead, let's go 1-0 lower with the Model 70. This is about as classic as it gets and could satisfy those who want a true hunter's rifles experience. I imagine the Model 700 in-game would serve as a faster alternative choice between the slow powerhouse that is the intervention at the same rank. Instead of trying to rework the M107 for the 50th time, why not just start fresh with a brand new 50 cal? Now, while pretty much anybody, including myself, loves Barrett sniper rifles, I actually think this slot should go to the AS-50. In terms of in-game performance, instead of drawing inspiration from the M107, I actually think the WA2000 could set a good example here, as overall this gun hasn't ever had any sort of massive power problems, so it would be a good basis for stylists to start fresh on making a balanced semi-auto anti-material rifle. I'll be honest, I considered straight up not even talking about this category because as of this video, pistols are tied first with assault rifles and PDWs in terms of the largest weapon category in Phantom Forces, which is just absolutely insane. But despite being filled to the brim with many different choices, a lot of them are either just variants of the starter pistols or absolutely obscure. So to help this cause, why not add some good old classics from way back then in the form of the Luger or Walter, the surprisingly missing additions back during the Veteran Gun update that, with proper stats and incentive to use them, could probably see more usage than most of the modern pistols already in the category. You know, back when the spring update came out, it added like 11 pistols to the game, which was great and all, but how the hell was the USP not one of them? The USP's icon status in FPS games is basically unrivaled, yet somehow this one still hasn't made it in 8 years later, which is honestly just laughable at this point. Lastly, am I the only one who thinks the 5.7 is kinda underwhelming? I mean, sure, for a pistol some of its stats are absolutely ludicrous, but in retrospect this pistol is the very definition of average. Which is why I personally think the P99 would be the perfect addition to breathe new light into the 5.7 without having to overhaul or alienate the weapon from its core user base. Now again, some categories in Phantom Forces are more well-rounded than others, and in terms of machine pistols, I actually think Stylis did a pretty good job, but there's one massive issue every gun in the category suffers from. They all run out of ammo way too fast. So what better option is there than the CBJ MS? I mean, come on, this thing has a bloody drum mag. Now, at face value, the CBJ would seem busted or overpowered, but due to its relatively slow fire rate compared to the rest of the category, I actually think this is the perfect side grade, trading overall slower time to kill for more ammo sustainability. Now, revolvers in Phantom Forces have always been kind of forgettable, mainly due to the fact that out of all of the options available, there's really only one that's worth using. And if there's one weapon that could potentially turn that around, then it'd definitely be the Colt Python. The revolver category is in desperate need of accessible viable options, and if there's anything that's viable, then it's a torso one-shotter. The Colt Python should serve as the first torso one-shotter that low ranks unlock that is easier to use in rapid succession, but overall loses to the Executioner's longer and more patient one-shot potential. Now, while I dismiss the 5.7 for being average, in this case I think Phantom Forces could seriously benefit from an all-rounder average revolver. I say this because I think the revolver category's biggest flaw is that every revolver has its own specific niche, which follows with each revolver having their own pretty notable downsides. As a result of this design philosophy, there's nothing for the majority of people who just want to use a 6-shooter to hook onto, ultimately neutering revolvers entirely as objectively worse secondary choices. But that begs the question of which revolver should take the slot as the average revolver. While considering we have a shotgun Taurus revolver and a one-shot gimmick Taurus revolver, I don't think there's a better choice than to finish the Taurus family with the Taurus 66, a tiny compact 6-shooter that would be like if the Executioner had the Deagle XIX's 357 Magnum conversion. The other category has always been kinda strange to me, as there's no real theme with the weapons in there, so what better place to put in the highly suggested Scorpion Evo? I mean, come on, this thing is basically a mini assault rifle mixed with PDW like RPM, and like, I don't think anyone would disagree when I say pretty much anyone loves the feel of basically having two primaries. This one is a must for the category. Now, while it may seem like a bit of a meme, am I the only one who thinks there should be dual wields in Phantom Forces? I mean, I'm not sure how it would work UI-wise, but I think the other categories should give you the option to choose between a select few secondaries that you'll then be able to dual wield. But to not make this basically double damage too overpowered, the recoil stats of the available weapons should be raised by around 50% while dual wielding, alongside also having very low reserve ammo to avoid the primary outclassing power trip they would be otherwise. And with that, those are some of the weapons I think should have been in Phantom Forces a long time ago. But hey, these were just some of my own opinions, so in case I missed anything, be sure to comment down below what guns you think should have been in Phantom Forces. And don't forget, make sure to boost this video with a like. But until next time, peace.